I know, you might be asking. Seong, what are those hands? And why am I looking at some random keyboard? Well... And to the second point, this isn't just any run-of-the-mill keyboard. This is my run-of-the-mill keyboard, the most important part of my computer battle station here. But I'm giving it a day at the spa to make it more my own, so this young lad comes out looking a little bit sharper and maybe boasting a little extra... click. To those who are just tuning in, hi, I'm Seong, your average hyperfixating keyboard, and this is my short-lived foray into the rabbit hole of keyboard modding. But what even is that keyboard? This is the Keychron C2, one of the most pedestrian kinds of mechanical pre-builds that you'll find, and that's pretty much its defining feature for me. For the longest time, when I first built the PC that would become the workhorse that it is today, I'd used pretty much any shoddy, bendable, dollar store grade membrane keyboard that I could find. Yes, most of them were pretty bad, some even being around for about 10 years at that point. Take this one for example, a gateway board that I just happened to have that was lying around. No lie, I found this one just sitting outside with a bunch of trash that a neighbor was hauling out at the time. It's got an old-fashioned PS2 connector, so I could use it easily with my dumpy old Binbo's PC. And it sounds... yeah, like you'd expect an old OEM board to. It's actually a bit of a deeper sound than the old Dell board that I'd used. It even has these Y2K shortcuts, which don't really do anything these days. Regardless, these kinds of boards were what I'd used for keyboarding for the longest time, and I knew that I wanted to get something better. So, at the time, maybe a year into my PC gaming journey, I got myself a Nixius Moda... whatever mechanical keyboard for about $45 used. At the time, it was one of the most budgety kind of mechanical keyboards with any sort of decently reputable switches, with that model bearing Kale Browns, at a time when Kale were known for being pretty much just knockoff cherries. And it did kind of feel that way, with these poop-encrusted tactiles being just kind of a marginal upgrade from the membranes I'd been used to. But they were mechanical and lasted me a decent long while back when my gaming desk was a literal cabinet. And right before I moved, and well prior to even considering doing YouTube as a hobby, I grabbed myself a nice going away present in the C2 here. As far as I understand it, Keychron has become something of a new darling child of the keyboard scene, mostly focusing on minimalist value-oriented boards with as many headlining features as possible. Nowadays, they have all sorts of boards, from all the different sizes you can think of in both wired and wireless flavors, and recently, some that boast QMK compatibility, making them fully customizable at the board level while maintaining pretty palatable prices.
Nice.
Meanwhile, this is none of those things. The C series, again, as far as I can gather, is the most conventionally budget of their library. Plain white and black caps, classic body, no wireless, and just two of the most traditional key layouts in 10 keyless and full-size forms. And ironically enough, that was the key selling point for me. Yes, it was cheap for one, but I really only wanted something for the desk that allowed me to get my work done. And the C series still has the hot swappable switches and lighting options, this one having the pure white LED, because I'm very much allergic to gamer RGB anything, no matter the FPS gains. You might also be wondering why I have the full-sized version, since most keyboarding enthusiasts would vouch for the smaller sizes, like 70% styles or 10 keyless. While true that those look much sleeker and fit a minimalistic theme much better, well, look at this desk. Do I look like any sort of minimalistic individual? Since I'm not strapped to a tiny, cramped little drawer in a computer cabinet anymore, I wanted the full size as sort of a flex to the amount of space that I can take advantage of now. That, and I also play quite a few older computer games, where some of them default to mapping to the numpad. I'm sure if I'd waited longer for something like the Q4, or especially the V5, which have slightly compacted 96% layouts, I would have gone that route, and honestly, I might still recommend those over the C2. The V-Series even has optional knob support, which just looks so sexy and smooth, Lynn. Oh, it looks so nice for only $70. Oh, right. Back to the C2. There was another reason I got this. Gatoron Red switches, which for some reason I keep wanting to call Gatoroid. Don't ask. Anyways, because the C2 has hot swappable switch mounts, meaning I can pull out and swap in any kinds of mechanical switch at any point, I wanted to run an experiment. See, I knew I wasn't going to care much for tactiles like those Hales I had, so I thought I'd get the C2 with linear switches, and if I didn't like the feel of them, then I'd narrow down my choices and swap in something else later. After all, I did try some Corsair keyboards using red switches at a Best Buy some couple of years ago, so I was extra curious what it'd be like to use those long term. Short and to the point, and at the risk of angering any keyboarders in the audience, I wasn't a fan. There was something about the effortless smoothness of the key travel and linears that didn't gel with me. Gatoron Reds in particular were really lightweight, so I'd almost constantly be bottoming them out. And I kind of figured that adding a bit of weight probably wasn't going to make me a fan either. I just wanted something with a little extra click. Something more than the tactile browns I had, and certainly something tougher than the pretty flimsy travel of the Reds. Now, I know, and many keyboard enthusiasts probably know, that you could go so much farther than what I'm doing. Not just building your own keyboard from scratch, but even tweaking the little things like stabilizers, case dampeners, weights, covering the board in friggin' tape and foil, and don't even get me started on lubing. I mean, honestly, the lengths that some people will go to improve their experience is just crazy. I mean, who'd want to go through all of that? I am not doing any of that. This is about as surface level as you can get for a keyboard mod, but I think you'd find it interesting just how these things work. Or don't. I don't know. I don't make these things. So later did eventually arrive just this past Christmas, and I was able to order the replacements that I was looking for, alongside a new set of keycaps that I had my eyes on from the beginning, which I thought would go great with the black. I was always going to change the caps out anyways, regardless of keeping the switches or not. And a couple of weeks after, my Chinese line haul package finally arrived. Then, an idea hit me. Probably one of my worst ones yet. Since it was going to be boring regardless by doing it alone, why not share that boredom and stream the whole process on my channel? That's exactly what I ended up doing. Most of the footage here is straight from my livestream, with that oh so adorably out of date layout I barely had any time to change since it was all made a few years ago. So long that I forgot how to actually start a YouTube stream in the first place. I meant to actually go up earlier, but I didn't realize that just setting your stream to start streaming isn't how streams work on YouTube. You have to make sure to press go live. And guess who completely forgot to do that? So, anyways, here's how that went. Because the whole point of streams is that you should be prepared for everything. I, as usual, am prepared for virtually nothing. The first step was removing the caps and the switches. Keychron were nice enough to give a competent wire cap puller in the box. However, the same couldn't quite be said for their switch puller. Then came disassembling the frame. So the one thing about the C2 is that this thing needs to be disassembled in a very particular way. I believe their other boards have like visible screws. Thankfully this doesn't seem to have a screw under this plate. Because it's all flush plastic, it requires popping out a bunch of everyone's favorite plastic tabs. Just why? If this has plastic tabs, I'm gonna be very disappointed. Well, I guess that's how they make it cheap. These things are so deceptively deep. See, maybe I should have done this beforehand. Should be able to come out. Click, click, every trip. The disassembly instructions provided by Keychron make it seem like you can just pry it out with a couple of picks. Yet, here I was having trouble just getting one side off. Now you can see my work ethic is very unrefined, shall we say. It's definitely coming off. It's like it wants to, but
kind of can't be done easily. These are very load-bearing legs. It is definitely coming apart, though. No wonder they don't want you removing this. Also, avoid the warranty, that precious warranty. You see, the ironic part is now I actually have to search something up, which means I need to use it with just the switches.
Turns out that there's little imperfections in the plastic coating that very slightly hints at the flat parts that lead to the tabs. And then you just stab blindly with a flathead in my case.
Oh. You've made progress. Alright, it has officially started coming out from that side. Okay. This is what happens when you're not prepared for anything, and most of your work revolves around preparing.
I spent so long here that some of the audience just noped out, and I feel that just watching this over right now, and I'm me.
It wouldn't be a stream worth doing if things went smoothly. Oh man, ain't that the truth? Wouldn't be a stream worth doing. Your hands weren't about to start bleeding. Oh man, that content creator I followed. What's he up to now? Oh, he's trying to stick pins and needles inside a keyboard case. Wow. I'm gonna unsubscribe. That would be fair. Honestly, I'll probably unsubscribe for my own content. I would ask, why am I even subscribed to myself in the first place? Oh man, of course. Had to come with the most epic music. The most subtly epic music in this playlist. Perfect. Here, the rest of it does come off, so gotta by the enter key.
Eventually, though, I did get it popped out all the way, after getting the tabs tucked away by the enter key and the inner edge of the numpad.
That's fucking evil. Yeah, freedom? It's in here. Alright. Actually, that's probably the point I need to start removing the switches themselves.
With the hardest part done, it was just a matter of unscrewing some small Phillips heads, then taking out the aluminum plate and the board.
That's the board taken apart. I think at this point it should just come off. I think. It does. Yep, and there's just the bare board at this point.
From here, I can clean out the plate and get some of the dust out.
Right, and there's also a popular mod that, thankfully, Keychron actually provides you the resources to do this with, because essentially, one of the popular mods is essentially to take the foam that's part of the box, cut it to size, obviously making sure to not get in the way of these raised legs, and that's used to help dampen the sound a little bit.
This foam mod I'm doing would normally be most useful for linears or quieter tactiles to pad out the case and reduce the hollow sound it has out of the box. But in my case, it would be somewhat redundant. Still, I wanted it to be more snug, so I did it anyways. Basically just cut it down to the rough size of the base, and then treat it in so the screws and posts poke through.
And I think I can just pop this through, which is probably the way to go, I think.
After that, I could start reassembling.
Slit every trip. That's a nice jar. I went a little bit crazy. I got myself Kale Jades and box navies.
Now I know some people will call me crazy for getting what's considered some of the loudest clicky switches known to man and aquatic space aliens the world over. But since I didn't much like linears as I described earlier and wanted something thicker than tactile, this kind of seemed like the natural conclusion to that. Kale box Jades and navies are considered some of the best and thickest clicky switches one can get, and LGR's blessing was enough to convince me.
These more lately, the Kale Navy box switches.
Besides, I'm an arch user, so I'm already used to throwing myself in at the deep end from the start.
These rolled up in a spectacular fashion. Wow.
These are clone sets of Dolce keycaps from AliExpress. The packaging, as it was, certainly didn't give the best first impressions.
I did not need to be reminded of this. I did not need to be reminded of this.
But to be honest, for what's ostensibly counterfeit caps, they look and feel pretty nice. I think they look really good on this board. What's interesting is that the seller, who seems to be very reputable in Alley, has multiple cap sets listed on their shop, and another using the exact same reference as the version of this set on this page. Same looking caps, just with a different price. This one I don't understand. From there, it's just popping everything in and refitting the top cover back into place.
Ooh, that's nice.
And success. Job done. Well, for the most part.
I'm just a little bit shy on usable switches for the numpad, so I think for that, I would just retrofit back some of the red switches, just because consistency.
And it wouldn't be a song project if something didn't go wrong on the first try.
Ooh. K is no bueno. This might be the one that snapped in at a weird angle. I have spares.
Turns out these bad keys were just inserted in a way that bent the pins badly. Thankfully, I had spares and fixed them in so they worked. So, oops, my bad. But yeah, it's put together and working.
This board is indeed very loud, which the noise-canceling microphone isn't going to handle that, but I like how it sounds. I'm almost disappointed that the keys aren't loud enough to break through the noise gate. But of course, we can't just do a normal typing test with this. Oh no, that is not how I work here.
And of course, I had to test it out the only way I knew how. Some good old rousing rounds of
the typing of the dead.
5 a.m. is prime gaming time. Yes! I'm watching you fail massively at taking a keyboard apart and then play an obscure game to an underselling console from years ago. Yes, that is indeed my vibe, because reasonability.
Though with it being close to midnight already and streaming for 4.5 hours by that point, and my fingers feeling like hell from all that case bullshit, it wasn't surprising that I was having a tougher go than I had hoped.
Got it. Alright, first continue. It's not as good as a 1GC. And I'm just missing keys. Congrats to the zombies for getting their hockey team together. Wow, it must have taken a lot of work. Hey, that's first. Probably by a slim margin. Oh, the prompts have been intentional! Yes! Wow, that was explosive.
But I did make it, with just a hit to spare even.
Wow, that was a very explosive explosion. Did George make this?
Way to go, you fat idiot. You even forgot to fix the title, jeez. Obviously, using what's effectively a new keyboard at this point, it's going to take some time to rebuild some of that muscle memory and break it in a little bit. So I'll be coming back to this in a week or so once I've gotten to play with it some more.
16 paranoia-filled days later.
Hi! Wait, I already did that. So it's been about 2 weeks since I built this thing, and I've certainly got some key thoughts. Regarding the build, after nearly bleeding over getting this thing taken apart, I can fully understand why metal would be more desirable. It isn't the plastic itself that's the problem. It actually feels really nice, and I can appreciate the understated vibe of a simple plastic base. But I think maybe jumping to at least the V series might be the better option in the long run. Aside from having the added benefits of a reprogrammable board, it would also be better made for mods like mine and easier to disassemble instead of just tearing into it like a caveman. The keycaps, especially for their price, I actually really quite like them. The color palette, or at least the colors these Chinese sellers are cloning, is superbly subtle and gels perfectly with the rest of the board's aesthetics. These in particular are PBT double shots, so they're made to let light shine through the key legends. Given the darker colorway, I can somewhat forgive the occasionally dim legends when it's turned off, because I normally have my lighting turned on, so in that case it's perfectly readable anyways when I'm actually using it. The printing is pretty consistent, no strange overprinting or discrepancies in the fonts, and the texture feels excellent compared to the smoothness of the stock caps, especially since the ones that come with this board started to shine less than a year of somewhat consistent use. So hopefully these will stay relatively grippy for longer. And then there's the switches. Both of the Kale box clickies I got took some time to adjust to the added pressure that they required. Going from fairly conventionally light linears to thicker and heavier jades, and especially the even weightier navies, was a bit jarring at first. I love the tactile action they give, and the sound is pleasant to me and feels incredibly affirmative. But my fingers got a bit tired pretty early for the first couple of nights. I felt this especially with extensive play of some games where shift is used for sprint. My pinky was a bit sore with the navies on the modifiers, so I made the executive decision to change these back out for jades, and the problem all but went away by then. I actually reached out to the budget Keeb server just to get an idea of whether this was common or not, and it turns out that these growing pains were far from rare for others that were changing between different key switches. Thanks to them for the advice, so I reduced the amount of navies to only be on less used keys like the function row, alt, super, caps, enter, and backspace, since those are keys I want to make sure I hit with intention, so the heavier actuation makes sense there. But the controls, shifts, and spaces I rolled back to jades. But you want to know the funniest part of the whole thing? Remember when I said I did this at LGR's blessing? Apparently, even this isn't what Clint used.
But in the GMMK Pro, I have a mixture of kale, pink, and navies. Pink.
Excuse me?
When I was looking back trying to get visual aid for this video, I swear I was having some Mandela effect shit, because I could have sworn I'd heard about jades from him. But somehow I must have gotten sidetracked in my research and convinced myself that jades were the way to go. Probably because pinks have gotten far less attention lately. Searching online tends to pick up results for the silent pinks, which are the complete opposite of the box ones. But it seems like, at least in retrospect, I'll have to order and try out more switches to find out what suits my taste. Which I guess brings me perfectly to my conclusion. Did I make this keyboard better? Yes. Absolutely. The clackety-click haters, for my taste, are blowing their noise way out of proportion, and I wouldn't have it sound any other way for my liking. But is this perfect, or even exactly how I wanted it? Not quite yet. Even just typing out this script is making me hungry to buy more bulk lots of switches just to see what suits my fancy. I wish I had the tools to do more mods for the C2, or heck, if I had the spare dough, I'd totally upgrade to a V5 and slap all of this on that board instead. Like I said, there's so many things that can be done to create the ideal keyboard, and if you aren't careful, or as financially strapped as I am, you'll fall into that rabbit hole of spending really quickly. Keyboarding is a hell of a drug, so take this as a cautionary tale of some of the things that can happen. But it wasn't all bad. This was the perfect excuse to try streaming again. Honestly, despite this case being a trip that I wouldn't send even my worst enemies to open, I had a ton of fun just vibing. We talked about all kinds of junk and Linux stuff, which is kind of redundant to say actually.
Do you like the fact that you're a Linux YouTuber now? Define like.
That said, I want to do more of this, but maybe when I have the time or the scratch for more anyways. And that just about covers everything. As always, thanks to everyone who's shown their support. This channel recently hit 1.6k, which means I hopelessly dated myself twice even. To everyone who's shared or shown any kind of support, it means a lot. It really does. If you have any comments or just want to shut me up as quickly as possible, you can do all of that in the comments down below. I think you get the gist by now. With that said, just remember to stay kind, be courteous, show some respect to the people around you. And
You fat idiot. It's supposed to be show some love to the people around you. How can you not get your script?
some people will call me crazy for getting what's considered some of the loudest clicky switches. Fuck. Why do I keep saying kinky switches? Kinky switches aren't a thing. And don't even get me started on lubing. No, not looting. Though, maybe some switch freak finds it sexual. What? No kink shaming. What did I write here? Blowing their use? The fuck?
Sorry, take two.
And thanks for watching. Why am I doing it like this? Am I really gonna be using this? Fuck it.
Why did I think this was a good idea?